Good morning. I'm John Ravitz, the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for the Business Council of Westchester. On behalf of Dr. Marcia Gordon, our President and CEO, Dr. Heidi Davidson, our Board Chair, and George Lentz, our Vice Chair of Government Action, I want to welcome everyone to our Political Leadership Series this morning. The Business Council of Westchester, which is the largest business membership organization focusing on advocacy and economic development, continues to try to find ways in which we can bring key leaders to Westchester County to not only give out reports, but to begin a dialogue with the Westchester business community. And that's really why we started our Political Leadership Series. It was an opportunity for us, again, to bring key stakeholders to meet with our members. And certainly over these last 2 years, as we have been dealing with the pandemic, we're very proud of the fact that our Political Leadership Series continues to do just that, bring those key leaders to Westchester County. In the last year and a half, we've had Senator Charles Schumer, the Majority Leader of the United States Senate, Governor Hochul, Lieutenant Governor Benjamin, Attorney General James, Comptroller DiNapoli, Majority Leader Stuart Cousins, Speaker Carl Hastie, as well as county leaders like our County Executive George Latimer. We would not be able to do these type of programs unless we had great support from our sponsors. So we want to thank our sponsors for our Political Leadership Series: Burke Rehabilitation Hospital, Empire City Casino by MGM Resorts, Levitt First Insurance, and Thale Industries. This morning's program is also being recorded live on our Facebook page. It also will be recorded and will be on our website at www.thebcw.org. If people were not able to hear today's presentation or couldn't hear the whole thing, they can go back and watch the entire program on our website. If you do have questions for our guest today, please put them in the Q&A box. If time permitted, we will get to as many questions as possible. But again, please put your questions in the Q&A box. As I said, as New York State looks to reemerge from the pandemic, one agency plays such a critical role in helping to bring back economic development to Westchester County, the region, and the state. And that's certainly the MTA and Metro North. And so we're very pleased today to have the leadership team here to talk and to give us a report on what's happening, not just in Westchester County, but the region. So our guests this morning are Janno Lieber, who is the chair and CEO of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and someone who has come to the BCW and given out reports in the past, and that's Catherine Rinaldi, who's the president of the MTA Metro North Railroad, and is also wearing an additional hat now as the interim president of the Long Island Railroad. And we want to thank them both for being here. But before I turn it over to Chairman Lieber, let me tell you a little bit about him. He was confirmed as chair and CEO of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority in January of this year, following his nomination to that position by Governor Hochul. Chairman Lieber has been serving as the MTA acting chair and CEO since July 2021 and is the authority's 15th chair since it was founded in 1968. In this position, Chairman Lieber provided strategic, financial, and operational leadership for the MTA, the largest public transportation agency in North America, and he also heads the MTA Board of Directors, senior leadership team, and a total workforce of more than 60,000 employees. From 2017 to 2021, Chairman Lieber served as the president of MTA Construction and Development, the organization responsible for planning, developing, and delivering capital projects across the MTA. In that position, he led the creation and implementation of the MTA's 2020-2024 $515 billion capital program. He also managed the integration and transformation of construction and development management practices at the MTA. Chairman Lieber, Mr. Rinaldi, thank you for joining us, and we're going to turn the program over to you.
Thanks, John, and thanks to you and Marcia Gordon for putting us all together this morning. It's a pleasure for me to be with all of you to talk about where we are at the MTA. We are at a critical moment. We're moving past COVID and winter, and we really need to focus on ridership, which is our number one priority, to support the return to normality, and especially to support businesses' effort to get folks back to the office. Right now, Metro North is serving about half of its pre-COVID customers, although last week there was a tremendous uptick in ridership, and Kathy will talk about that a little later. We understand we may not get 100% of pre-COVID riders back, certainly in the short term, but we want folks to be able to elect to ride mass transit. We want to attract people back to mass transit, both, as I said, to support business, but also to make sure that the MTA gets back to financial stability. We're trying to make commuting as attractive as possible. And we want hybrid workers to choose public transportation as they maybe come back to a 2 to 3 or 4 day a week travel schedule. That's a little easier now because right at this moment, gas prices are kind of pushing people back to public transit, obviously. But ultimately, our main appeal is great service, which is what we're all about. Metro North has incredible on-time performance, which is a credit to Kathy Rinaldi and to her plan that she rolled out a couple of years ago, which was called The Way Ahead. For the last 2 years, we've had 97% on-time performance. It's only the second time in the railroad's history that OTP has exceeded 97% for 2 consecutive years. And we think that 2022 will be a third year, and not just a third year in a row, not just for on-time performance above 97%, but we're also going to be increasing the amount of service. There was a shrinkage of the number of trains in the peak hour in response to the realities of ridership and demand. But now we're moving very quickly back towards pre-COVID levels. And I can actually tell you right now that we're going to be restoring 66 trains to the daily ridership, the daily schedules on the 3 east of Hudson Line, which will include a lot of express trains. So hopefully people will be seeing a little faster commutes in the morning in particular. It's going to reduce trip times by up to 13 minutes because, again, more express trains for fewer local stops. Weekend service is already back to 100% of where it was pre-COVID, and we've seen the strongest demand in the discretionary periods, nights and weekends, when folks have free time, which is a great sign because it means that where people have somewhere to go, where they want to get around, they're choosing mass transit. But of all this, these various issues that are flying around, what I'm especially excited about is fares. That has been a priority of mine since I took over the chair 6 months ago. And after months of work, our board and our staff produced a really exciting package of fare promotions that was launched just a week ago for our monthly tickets. Monthly riders, they're going to see a 10% price discount off of monthly tickets. But there's a new 20-trip ticket option that was designed specifically for the hybrid worker in mind, and it has a 20% savings off of regular peak fare prices. And the other thing is, and this kind of goes to a new reality we're dealing with, is that for railroad travel within the city, we expanded the $5 flat fare to all weekday off-peak trains. Now, that doesn't impact on Westchester as much, but we're trying to make sure that there is more usage of Metro North system in general, and that's going to benefit everybody overall. You might have also heard about what we're doing on the subways and buses, which is what we call fare capping. It means that instead of having to decide whether you want to buy a weekly ticket at the beginning of the week, figuring out how many times you might ride the subway or the buses, you can just tap and go using our new Omni tap and go system. And starting at 13 rides, everyone after that for the week will be free. You're going to see more of this, although this is for subways and buses right now. You're going to see more of this kind of use of the new technology of Omni as we go along, and they're going to be benefiting. We're going to figure out ways to make sure it benefits the commuter railroads as well. We want coming to the city to be seamless, enjoyable. Grand Central is, the finest transportation facility in North America. I can say with confidence. I know most people are comfortable agreeing with that. But it had a challenging 2 years. But let me tell you, get to Grand Central and you'll see it's really come back to life. Restaurants are opening in the dining concourse. It's, you know, the security situation, it's really well policed. We're making sure of that. And we've got new bike parking. There's a lot going on in Grand Central, and it's going to become an even more dynamic place when in the basement of Grand Central, we're going to have connections to Long Island Railroad. So, you know, folks who for whatever want to get out to the island can actually connect right through Grand Central. They can go out to JFK Airport through Grand Central starting at the end of 2022. It's the what they call the Long Island Railroad East Side Access Project. It's been long in the making, not taking over any Metro North tracks, I emphasize, but in the basement, there is below Grand Central, there's a brand new train station for Long Island Railroad, and it's going to build connectivity for the whole region as well. But it's not just about travel to Manhattan. We want to unlock the potential of the entire MTA system, especially to improve reverse commuting and expand our reach. As I said, the East Side Access Project, which is, you know, a marquee project of our current capital plan, is going to open up in the basement, what I said, the sub basement of Grand Central by the end of the year. That's going to make connecting to the broader region good. It's one of the reasons I was excited to have Kathy Rinaldi take on a second role as the interim president of the Long Island Railroad. But we're also looking at Metro North having an option to come into Penn Station. Now anybody who uses Grand Central and Penn probably prefers Grand Central right now, but we're in the process of making Penn a much, much more attractive place. And for folks who are traveling to the west side of Midtown, Penn may be more convenient. We're going to be adding 4 new Metro North stations in the Bronx. That's going to serve a whole new community that really didn't have mass transit access before in Co-op City and Parkchester and some other neighborhoods. And that construction is underway. We anticipate that we'll be finishing important renovations to Penn by the time that work, actually, that project is completed in about 4 to 5 years from now. But it's good, again, the whole idea is more connectivity for both Metro North and Long Island Railroad throughout the region. I have to say that, you know, I am clear-eyed about the fact that none of these upgrades will be enough to win people back if they don't feel safe, if riders don't feel safe using public transit. We've all seen the press coverage about, you know, some of the recent horrific incidents that took place in the mass transit system on the subways in particular. We're not going to tolerate violence or attacks on our workforce or our riders. The mayor has really been upfront, and God bless him. The mayor has said that not only is he going to work in a humanitarian way to help homeless and folks having mental health issues get out of the subways, but he's actually instructing the police to enforce the subway rules of conduct. And, you know, that's really important. We don't want an environment of disorder to break out in our public transit system. So both Governor Hochul, who's been great on mass transit issues, and Mayor Adams have said that they're determined to see this new subway safety plan through. It's not going to change everything overnight. There's still a lot of folks who have found their way into the mass transit system during COVID, but enforcement of the rules is really going to pay off. My job in this complicated environment, I believe, is to be a voice for the riders. And I'm going to hold our partners in city and state government responsible and accountable for protecting the system and our riders while we're trying to make sure we're setting the MTA up to be successful. So those are a few of the issues that I wanted to convey to all of you today. And with that, I wanted just to turn the podium over, the virtual podium for a moment, to my friend and colleague, Kathy Rinaldi, who's been such an amazing president of Metro North. So amazing that we took advantage of her background as a Long Island Railroad leader and a refugee from Long Island, where she grew up, to ask her to serve as the president of the Long Island Railroad in this incredibly transformational year, as well as her Metro North role. So Kathy, will you pipe up for a few minutes and sharing what you're working on?
Sure, of course, and thank you very much for that kind introduction, Janno. It's been a thrill to be the president of Metro North for the past 4 years, and now I've got the second gig, and it's a challenge, but it's a wonderful opportunity, so thank you so much. Janno sort of touched upon a lot of the stuff that I wanted to mention. Really, from the earlier days of the pandemic, we had reduced our service to hourly. It was the essential service plan, and really since that time, as ridership, started to come back, we've adjusted our schedule a couple times, and now we're pleased, based upon the ridership surges that we've been seeing, to be able to do a complete schedule rewrite. So we're going to actually not be layering trains into the existing schedule, which is what we've been doing for the past 2 years, but it's a completely new schedule that responds to the ridership that we're seeing now, and that will bring back some of the zoned expresses that people loved before the pandemic and haven't seen for a few years. So just to break it down, on March 27th, as Janno said, we're going to be bringing 66 additional trains to our east of Hudson lines, which equates to moving from 142 to 156 trains on the Hudson line, from 190 to 208 on the Harlem, and from 244 to 278 on New Haven line. So a very nice, healthy bump up in service. Janno extolled our on-time performance for the past couple of years, which I appreciate, but I also think that giving people more options with respect to when they want to travel, giving them more express service, shorter trip times, will be something else that will make more people want to come back to our system. It's a very important part of the customer experience. Just a bit on ridership, Janno alluded to this as well. Right before our friend Omicron, we were actually doing pretty well. We were sort of hovering around 50%. Then, as much of the region, we experienced a bit of a setback in late December through early January. But since that time, we've been seeing ridership recover pretty steadily week over week. And last week was just a tremendous, surprise and just wonderful to see on both railroads, actually. With the beginning of the month, we were, hovering in the high 50s, low 60s some days with respect to percentage of pre-COVID ridership that was back. And even by the end of the week, we were at roughly 55% of pre-COVID ridership, which was not just a post-Omicron record. It's basically a record since COVID started. So we are seeing extremely strong ridership east of Hudson, over the past couple weeks. Really, really good to see. We're hoping it's a harbinger of things to come in the spring, as more and more employees start to come back, even if it's a couple days a week. I think we're still, waiting to see how many days a week people start coming back to work. But we are prepared to greet them with this increased service. And as Janno mentioned, we have fare products that meet our customers where they are. We're especially interested to see what the 20-trip ticket does. We saw a nice take up with that last week, because it does seem to reflect the realities of this post-COVID ridership. So it's an exciting time for Metro North, a lot going on. As Janno said, one of the really exciting ways to end 2022 is with the award of the contract for Penn Access. Penn Access is going to be a really transformational project. It's going to bring in New Haven line trains across the Hellgate into Penn Station, opening up access to reverse commute destinations for commuters who live in the Bronx. They can travel, to New Haven line destinations in New York State and Connecticut. They can travel to Penn. East Side Access, as Janno mentioned, is going to be opening towards the end of this year, which will bring tremendous regional connectivity. It's been generally talked about as a project that benefits Long Island commuters, but it's also going to benefit people like me who live in the Hudson Valley but have an office in Jamaica. It's going to open up destinations in Queens, Long Island, for people in Westchester and beyond in a way that just doesn't currently exist. So it's an incredibly exciting regional project that I'm really happy to be a part of. So I think that's what I wanted to talk about this morning. I know we were going to, pass the baton back over to John for some Q&A, and I'm happy to answer any questions people might have about Metro North service.
Thank you both for that report. And it is really so important for the Westchester business community and the Westchester residents to learn about this. I'll call it breaking news that you shared today about the new express trains. I think that's going to make commuting more easier, and for Westchester businesses that have to go and have employees go into the city for meetings will really make a huge difference. I want to take a step back, if you don't mind, because both of you were put in an incredible position of having to run an important, vital core agency for the state of New York during a pandemic. And the challenges that you both must have had to face, the decisions that you both had to face, the fact that you had to be really responsible for 60,000 employees as well. Can you share with us a little bit about those first few weeks of the pandemic and what, again, what strategies that you felt you had to put in place to move forward?
Well, I'll start off, and Kathy did such a great job. She has a lot to describe, but I was in a slightly different job. I was running MTA construction and development at the outside of the pandemic, and our focus was on what do we do about the capital program? Are we going to stop building and fixing and improving the system, or are we going to keep going? And when the state defined transit infrastructure as essential construction work, we were enabled to start. We figured out how to do that work safely without a lot of COVID spread and a lot of risk in the construction environment. We really literally taught people how to operate in smaller groups and keep social distance and not share tools and, stage exiting and entering facilities and not crowding into mechanical rooms, all that stuff. So we were able to get actually more work done in some ways during COVID than before. And it has been a net positive for the MTA. We couldn't start new projects because we didn't know if money was coming from Washington until the Biden administration capped it off with the American Rescue Plan. But we were able to get a lot of work done, which was positive. The constraint was on the human side that we had a lot of folks who got sick, just like everybody in the region, and it affected, to some extent, our ability to provide service. And we didn't know a lot about transmittal, so there was a lot of uncertainty about how to safely operate transit. But what the agency did, and it was under the previous leadership, but it was very successfully executed, was to institute this very aggressive program of cleaning stations, cleaning all the cars every day, all the buses every day. And although obviously ridership dipped, I think we over time managed to preserve rider confidence in the safety of the system. We talked a lot about the air quality and how quickly filtration and air turnover took place. So we were able to preserve confidence in the safety of the system to put us in a position that we're in today to come back. And the most challenging aspect of this was obviously the workforce, because in those early days, we had a lot of folks get sick, and we had, it's no secret, we had over 150 folks throughout the course of the pandemic, MTA employees who died. And most of that happened before vaccination, when we didn't know whether it was safe for people to be out and operating in these public environments. So the MTA workers were truly heroic. It's something that we'll never stop talking about. And we also learned that they were carrying the essential workers who allowed the city and the region to continue to operate during the pandemic, which was, incredibly important, that people be able to get to hospitals and pharmacies and grocery stores and delivery centers and so on. So at the end of the day, we preserved service, we preserved what we could support the region's economy and viability. But the most important thing is that we supported our workers as they got through that terrible period where they were on the front lines. And in the end, the message of this whole experience that I talk about to people on the outside is that the MTA and mass transit are as essential to the region as police, fire, and sanitation. And when we deal with the financial consequences to the MTA of COVID, which now have us facing a few years out a real fiscal cliff, we have to bear in mind that the region doesn't work without mass transit, and we have to invest in it accordingly. So those were a few aspects, both the human side, the operating side, and the construction side that we dealt with, John.
And let's shift a little to, and it is Herculean effort that you and your employees did, and we should all thank them when we see them when we're on the trains for the service that they did and continue to do. It was no secret before the pandemic that the MTA always faced fiscal challenges. And obviously with the long-term strategic planning that you wanted to put in place, those challenges even got larger. If there is any upside to what we've all had to go through for the last 2 years, it has been that Washington has stepped in. And I know that you and your leadership team were very strong in urging Washington to make sure that they provided the necessary funds to reemerge from the pandemic. Can you talk to us a little bit about the funding that's coming from Washington and where it's going?
Sure. Well, there are 3 COVID relief bills. I mean, this all seems like a million years ago, but it was only a year to year and a half ago. There were 3 different COVID relief bills, as I said, capped by the Biden administration's American Rescue Plan bill. And they total giving the MTA $14.5 billion of relief to plug the operating budget holes that were created by the dramatic impact on ridership. At the beginning of the pandemic, the MTA was losing $200 million a week compared to budget because we were running service to support the essential workers, but obviously with a tiny fraction of the previous ridership. So that filled that $14.5 billion. Now we actually got, believe it or not, $700 million more in the last week out of another discretionary program in Washington. But it only covers our shortfalls based on projections. No one has a crystal ball, but so far the projections have held through 2025. At that point, the ridership costs and other costs associated with COVID bite and create and contribute to a structural deficit the MTA is facing that is about $2 billion in size on an annual basis. So I've been talking to the legislature, and one of the most serious leaders in that effort from day one has been Amy Paulin, who is a senior member of the Assembly, the chairman of the Committee of Jurisdiction over the MTA in the New York State Assembly, and represents big chunks of Westchester. We've been talking to Assemblymember Paulin and others about the need to deal with the MTA's long-term financial needs. I would add one other thing is that's the operating budget. On the capital budget side, we are in pretty strong shape because, before COVID, we had a $50+ billion capital budget started, which we're now in the process of actually awarding the contracts and getting work going. And as I said, that work didn't really, it was delayed slightly, but it hasn't been permanently impacted. So we're able to continue to invest in, new track, new signals, new ADA accessibility, and many other things that everybody wants for the MTA. And, that funding is intact.
I want to go back to something that you touched on, Chairman Lieber, and obviously is unfortunately something that is dominating the news, and each day we unfortunately are seeing some horrific public safety issues that are happening on your system. It really should be noted, and again, I've been in government for 30 years, served in the Assembly for 12 years, was the ranker on the Corporations Committee. I've never seen a chairman of an MTA do what you did last week, which was really stand up and really talk about what needs to happen to protect your ridership and your employees, but also to bring some common sense public safety back to the MTA and the Metro North system. What's the response been? I mean, are you hearing that legislators in Albany are understanding what the ramifications are if we don't do something?
Listen, in the division of labor, John, you said it right, which is that I have to speak for the riders. And, I'm not here to be a lobbyist for specific criminal justice initiatives, and, all that stuff is going to have to be debated in the legislature. All I can say is we need a system that protects our riders from, people, especially this category of people who are recidivists. I mean, what outraged me was not just the horror of that episode. We can't even, it's hard to even talk about, where the woman was attacked with human excrement, but the fact that the guy had 4 outstanding priors on the he had several outstanding priors on the transit system and in the Port Authority bus terminal. And one of them was a hate crime, and he had 19 priors. And the fact that he walked without bail and then was the next day Facebooking from the station where he attacked that woman, to add insult to injury, it just, common sense you can't reconcile to that. So what I'm saying, and I'm going to keep saying it, is folks need to get together to deal with that. Now, Mayor Adams, in fairness, this morning pointed out that the judge probably misunderstood or didn't properly exercise the discretion that she had. I'm not getting into that. I just need to speak for riders and saying that can't be the situation. You just can't let that kind of situation prevail. But the bigger issue, John, that you're raising is that we need a sense of order in the system. There are these individual horrific incidents that capture public attention, that appropriately so. But what we're asking the NYPD to do is to really start to enforce the rules of the subway system. No shopping carts, no smoking, no open drug use, the kind of stuff which may not be an attack, a physical attack on an individual, but communicates that the system is, not a place where people are following the rules. It makes people really uncomfortable when somebody is breaking the rules. And we're counting on the NYPD to do that. The great news is Mayor Adams has specifically said again and again that he wants those rules enforced. He got kind of poetic at one point. He started saying no drug use, no smoking, no barbecues. I didn't know there were barbecues going on in our system, but the mayor's really been very outspoken, and we're gonna, actually ask the NYPD to make good on his commitments, which have been so strong.
Well, and again, we appreciate you taking a leadership role on that. And at the Business Council of Westchester, please know that you have our support, and anything we can do to help continue to try to bring some of it, as we've said, some common sense back into this process. We will be there for you. A few questions that we have from folks who are watching today's program. Shouldn't you take advantage of incredibly high gasoline prices by offering dramatic financial incentives to get riders out of their cars and back on the rails? Get those habits formed again that were somewhat lost during the pandemic.
It's a good point, but I think we're doing that. As I said during the course of my presentation, we've got this new 20-trip ticket, which is designed for the hybrid worker and has a 20% discount versus normal peak fares. A new fare product that people are, really moving towards very quickly as of last week. Kathy talked about it. We've got discounts on regular monthly passes, and not to be overlooked, we delayed scheduled fare increases both in 2021 and in 2022. That was because Governor Hochul pushed some additional money to the MTA as part of her executive budget. So we're not raising fares, and in the normal course, we really have to because our costs do go up, labor especially, and we're actually reducing fares. So I think that the questioner is onto something, but I think we're taking action in that direction, and we hope it'll work.
And just one follow-up question that just popped up. Will the 20-trip ticket expire in 6 months as the 10-trip did, or is that going to be expanded as well?
Kathy, remind me of that one.
I have to check myself. I think it's 30 days, but I'll have to double check.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another question is, how can the MTA partner or plan to partner with the following two constituents to serve their needs? The first is people who have moved into the Metro North Railroad service territory during the pandemic and may not be familiar with rail service and are now choosing between single occupancy vehicles or mass transportation. And the second constituency is our businesses, employers, and employment hubs that pre-existed in the service territory and new ones that have opened, who serve the reverse commute, i.e. universities, colleges, Stanford financial and professional businesses, White Plains businesses, Lion Gate Studio, which is, we're so excited, is going to be opening up in Yonkers, and of course Regeneron, which continues to be a global gem for Westchester County and is expanding their footprint as well.
Kathy, do you want to take that? You did so much to expand reverse commuting service to Westchester. Maybe you can take that one.
Sure, absolutely. And as I indicated, and Janno also said up front, I mean, part of what we're doing to encourage more people to come back is to actually do the service increase that's currently scheduled for the 27th of March, which will return service levels to 89% of pre-COVID service, which, given that we're only carrying roughly 52% of our pre-COVID ridership, is a fair amount of capacity for the ridership that we're seeing and has a, potential for growth. In terms of the reverse commute, oh, absolutely. I mean, it's really the thing that distinguishes currently Metro North service from Long Island Railroad service. We've got, as the questioner notes, we've got some very, very important job destinations throughout the region. So White Plains, Stamford, now Yonkers. So, some of those trains pre-COVID, you would see trains leaving Grand Central on their way to Stamford that would be just as packed as trains coming into the terminal. And you've got as many people getting on as getting off in White Plains in the morning. So the schedule increase that we're contemplating for the end of the year, that we're implementing for the, I'm sorry, not the end of the year, the end of the month, that we're implementing at the end of the month, is really intended to try to get the service levels out there that are going to be necessary to spur the region's recovery. With respect to how we kind of draw people in who are new to Metro North territory, I mean, I think we do that in partnership with the great marketing group that reports to Sarah Meyer at MTA, in terms of just sort of being very clear with respect to the benefits of the services that we provide, the safety, the reliability, the choice. I mean, there's a lot that commuter rail has going for it. We're very, very focused with respect not only to sort of the security elements that Janno alluded to, but also with respect to some of the kind of post-COVID safety stuff. So we have a load weighting feature on our app where people can actually see whether cars are crowded. They can sort of position themselves on the platform to go to a car that's less crowded if they feel more comfortable spacing out. We have, state-of-the-art air purification. We have cleaning protocols. There's a lot that we have done post-COVID that we will continue to do to give our customers the safest environment possible. And we try to talk about all those innovations as often as we can in events like this, other events throughout the region, word of mouth, to make sure that people understand how important the service is and just how safe the service is as we try to entice more and more people to come back.
That's so important. And I hope both of you and your staffs will allow us through the Business Council of Westchester, if there are new programs and initiatives. You all are members of the BCW. So we want you to take advantage of our member news. We can put things up on our website so that our members can see some of these new initiatives and strategies that hopefully will continue to increase ridership as well. We also have so many businesses and related businesses who are members who are doing work in or around the various stations in Westchester County. Are there any updates on some of the, I think some projects that were starting before the pandemic that hopefully now are getting back up to speed?
Well, I mean, John, we were thrilled to be able to open, this incredible upgrade of the White Plains station during COVID. If folks have been there, it really is, it is really a dramatically improved space, both in terms of, the finishes and the overall sense of how it is, but simple stuff like, bathrooms and stairways and platforms and areas you can wait on the platform to make sure you can stay warm. So that was one of our, in terms of stations, that was really one of our hallmark projects during COVID. And, literally, I think every elected official within striking distance of White Plains joined us to celebrate that opening. But Kathy, maybe you can talk about some of the other projects that are ongoing.
Sure. And oh, by the way, the 20-trip ticket is good for 60 days, not 30 days. So with respect to other projects that are ongoing, a lot of the projects are not necessarily visible to our customers, but they're incredibly important. And I want to sort of talk about two of them. And I know they're near and dear to Janno's heart. One of them is the Grand Central train shed. So the train shed is essentially the steel structure that keeps Park Avenue from falling into the rest of Grand Central. And it's an old structure. It's a bridge essentially, and it's decaying at a sort of an alarming rate. We are extremely focused with respect to the replacement of the train shed. It's incredibly important, obviously, to the safety and reliability of Metro North service. The other major project that we're awarding, and that's going to be also very important to the integrity of Metro North service, is the complete replacement of the Park Avenue viaduct. Now, you'll all recall that there was a fire there several years back. There was a gardening center underneath that there was some mulch or something caught on fire. And it really caused us to re-examine the safety of that infrastructure. And it's perfectly safe now, but it's old and needs to be replaced. And under the leadership of the Construction and Development Corporation that Janno used to lead, we are in the process of doing a phased replacement of that structure. Every Metro North train that goes into Grand Central crosses over that structure. So the replacement of the viaduct is incredibly important. So those are two major GCT projects that are funded in the current capital program and that are underway and that are, real important investments in the future of Metro North service into Grand Central.
That's
But
great.
I will add one of the things that in looking a little ways down into the future that we're fighting to make sure is included in any plan for future Penn Station expansion is that we have the capacity to run the Hudson Line straight down the west side so that it doesn't have to go out through Queens the way it does, the way it does now. That's one thing. There's that tunnel, which is used to a great extent by Amtrak for the Empire service. And we want to put in the future to put Metro North trains there with a little faster connection to Penn. So the ideal is that you would have the option to go to Penn or Grand Central from several Metro North lines, not just from the New Haven line, which is where we're doing that Penn Access project from New Rochelle onto the Amtrak Hellgate line and into Penn. So trying to create more connectivity and more options for our Metro North commuters as well.
Then that's going to be such an added tool that we can use to recruit and retain businesses here when that happens. I got to tell you guys, the 20 peak trip is getting a lot of questions. So I just one more if we could, and if not, maybe you can get it back to us if you don't have that. Will the 20 trip ticket be available for both peak and off-peak times? And will the 10 trip still be an available option?
So the 20 trip is envisioned as an alternative for peak travel. It's not, the point of that ticket is not really an off-peak thing. It's more geared towards customers who want to buy a peak ticket, but for whom the monthly may not make sense given how frequently they're traveling. So if they're only traveling twice a week, probably doesn't make sense or may not make sense to buy a full monthly. So the 20 trip is available for them. So that's sort of the niche that we're getting at with the 20 trip ticket. And the 10 trip, the 10 trip is not going away because of the 20 trip. It's just an alternative product for people who don't, it might not necessarily make sense for them to buy a monthly to travel during the peak.
Sure. Okay. Really the last question, and then this is one that obviously we've been following at the Business Council of Westchester because it does have an economic impact for some of our businesses as well. And that's the whole issue of congestion pricing and how it's going to affect your agency as well. Do you have any updates on what that's looking like?
Sure, I can take that one, John. Look, congestion pricing is, the reasons that we have to do congestion pricing are not negative towards anybody who drives. It's just the reality that we need to preserve the congestion is harming our ability to deliver key services. And I think of things like, the key is we have to have buses, we have to have ambulances and other emergency vehicles be able to get around. We have to make it possible for paratransit vehicles to get around. We have to make it possible for all the delivery trucks that are now the reality of our modern economy to make their way around. So it's that is what, among other things, is pressing us to adopt a congestion pricing system that's been adopted widely in major European capitals, including London. Where we are is we're in the middle of this federal environmental review, which is complicated, but is federally required. That process is likely to wind down by the end of this year, 2022. And then the implementation of congestion pricing with the construction, the installation of the tolling infrastructure, which will be like what we have, the over-the-road tolling that we have on bridges and so on. It'll just be basically, the photography systems that capture images. That'll begin and it'll go into effect sometime in 2023 under current plans. There's been a very extensive outreach process consistent with the federal requirements, but there is going to continue to be outreach right through the next 6 months. And so there's a, if you go to the MTA's website and you want to comment for whatever reasons, there are links that get you onto that. And we've had, 60, 70,000 comments already. And we're ready to take more because it's complicated. We have to take everybody's views into consideration. So I hope that's responsive, but that's where we are with congestion pricing. It's coming probably in 23.
Okay, thank you for that update. Again, we want to thank both Chairman and CEO Janno Lieber and President of the MTA Metro North Railroad and the interim president of the Long Island Railroad, Catherine Rinaldi, for joining us today. I got to tell you that, when I was in the assembly, I represented the east side of Manhattan in the 90s, and the dream of having a Second Avenue subway built was just that, a dream. And you all are part of an organization that made a commitment and got it done. And as I said, it's been really inspiring to see how you and your employees have really continued to try to maintain services for the people of this region during these last 2 years. So thank you both for your leadership. Thank you for joining us. And again, please make sure that you reach out to the BCW if we can ever be of any assistance. Again, I want to thank our sponsors for this morning's program: Burke Rehabilitation Hospital, Empire City Casino by MGM Resorts, Leverett First Insurance, and Thale Industries. Thank you again for your support. Again, this program has been recorded live on Facebook Live, and it also will be on our website tomorrow. So for those of you who only caught a portion of it or want to send it to some of your colleagues, please do so, because it was a very informative program. Just some things to look out for regarding our advocacy work for the business community in Westchester County. Our legislative agenda is now on our website. So please go to that, www.thebcw.org. It covers both local, county, state, and federal issues. And we are very excited that we will be able to go back to Albany for our Albany Lobby Day. And that is going to be on May 3rd. Look for more information about that. We encourage all members who can join us for a full day of meetings in Albany, but in person this year, which will be, I think, a very, very special day. So again, be on the lookout for that. Again, Chairman Lieber and President Rinaldi, thank you for your time today. Thank all of you for watching. Please remain safe, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, John. Thanks, everybody.